Cobra Kai is back on YouTube with a new series which was published on the platform on the 23rd of April of this year. After much hype for the first season, it delivered on all fronts and received rave reviews from the critics and fans of the franchise. My expectations for the second season were high after I loved the first series. Once it ended, I was wondering where the story would go next and how much of a role Kreese would take on in the new series as it ended with his return. Now, I grew up watching the Karate Kid films. I've reviewed all of them on my channel, apart from the next Karate Kid and the Jaden Smith remake, but touched upon them in my coverage of the first film. So watching Cobra Kai was a nostalgic trip, but nostalgia can only go so far. Making references and homages are fun, but a film or TV show has to offer something more than just that, and thankfully Cobra Kai went above and beyond. As I said in my review of the first season, Cobra Kai is better than the Karate Kid original trilogy. It's quite easy to top Karate Kid Parts 2 and 3. The first one is the most well-rounded and respected of the franchise, but the beauty of a TV format, you get the opportunity to offer more story and character development. Cobra Kai could have been a disaster, but it karate kicked expectations, and with all sequels to movies or further seasons on TV, it's tough to keep the quality high and for the story to keep you engaged. Thankfully, for the most part, I enjoyed Season 2 of Cobra Kai, but I don't think it's as engaging or as satisfying as Season 1. With the story, we find the characters still in the same situation. Johnny has continued training his students, and Daniel has set up his own dojo to entice new students, and hoping ones from Cobra Kai will move over to him to be trained in the ways of classic karate, in the teachings of self-defense only and having control of your anger, and having everything in your life balanced, which becomes a key part of his training. As Season 1 ended with the return of Kreese, Martin Kove of course is back as the ultimate villain of the Karate Kid franchise. At 73 years old, he still looks the part, and still has that intimidating presence on screen. Kreese in the new series has fallen on hard times, and wants to get back into Johnny's life and regrets his actions and his aggressive ways of training in the past, but Johnny has his doubts, and the students are surprised by the no mercy way of thinking when in battle that begins to cause suspicions within the group that he could still be the same Kreese of the past. Miguel still pines over Samantha, who has started showing an interest in mid-90s haircut Robbie, who is now living with the LaRussos as his mother has disappeared off with another man. Miguel gets the affections of a new student at Cobra Kai called Tori, whose background is not made entirely clear, but she has experience in martial arts, and with her aggressive attitude she fits well within the team. The Cobra Kai students have started showing off and bullying others around them, and causing some of the less than confident students to come to Daniel for training, causing friction between the schools. The highlight of the show is still William Zabka as Johnny Lawrence. The level of his performance is extremely high, and he always delivers the emotional moments with such skill and passion that you totally believe in his character. The comedy that is derived from his somewhat old-fashioned way of thinking adds to his charm. It feels like he has missed the 90s and noughties and just quantum leaped from the 80s to 2019. One of the many highlights is when Johnny discovers the internet and upgrades to a smartphone and gets frustrated by its constant updates. One of my favourite episodes is when Johnny is hanging out with some of his old Cobra Kai pals from the original film. Ralph Macchio as Daniel LaRusso, who has a skill of not getting old, isn't as cocky or as irritating as he was in the first season. Daniel is a good guy, but with how the series is directed and written, I think the audience is always rooting for Johnny. You support the lead who has fallen on hard times and who is trying to get themselves back on track and to head down a path that improves them as a person. That's what Johnny is trying to do, whereas Daniel, who is already successful and likes to make that clear, you find yourself rooting for him less despite his good intentions. Being in my 30s, and when you have a show with many characters that are teenagers, I often lose interest, especially when it deals with their problems with school and their relationships. I find that scenario in movies and TV shows a bit too cheesy and juvenile for my liking. We've seen it all before, teenagers getting into silly fights over who kissed who, and egos getting out of control and seeing them act in a way that is a bit unrealistic, especially the final episode, which throws the series into a ludicrous direction that made me laugh out loud. Granted, it was entertaining, but for the wrong reasons. All the young actors do a good job with their roles. I don't think there is any wooden acting or bad delivery of dialogue. Hawk is definitely the most irritating character of the show. His ego and attempts to forget about his nerdy past makes him often insufferable to watch. He is written to be as such, and the actor Jacob Bertrand plays the part so well. I would say the biggest issues I have with this season is that you don't really know where the story is going. In the first season, you know they are working towards a tournament. It follows a similar path to the first Karate Kid film. With Season 2, it just continues on with their competition between the karate schools, and Johnny and Daniel are still at odds with their past, and the only interesting aspect for me is the return of Chris into the fold, and how he is influencing Johnny and his students. That is really the main drive of the new story, so I think it offers less in that regard for pushing things forward. The first few episodes I was a bit unsure if I was going to stick it out, then suddenly it got back into the swing of things and my interest was piqued and things were back on track. One of the strengths of the first season was the music composed by Leo Byronberg and Zach Robinson. It brought over the classic themes of the original film composed by the legendary Bill Conti and threw in electronic music to homage the style of 80s synth music with a flavouring of 80s rock. Season 2 follows the same direction but uses less of Bill Conti's music because there is less opportunity to use it without shoehorning it in, and they instead use their own compositions which takes on a similar style to Conti's work. The music throughout the show is brilliant like the first season, and it throws in a cover of Bananarama's song Cruel Summer, which isn't too bad and works well within the scene they use it for. Despite my issues with Season 2, I still find it enjoyable to watch and happy to see where the series is going. I know Season 3 has been announced, and it's clear that Season 2 is where things begin to take a bad turn for the characters, with all stories and 3-act structures very much like movie trilogies. If they have an ongoing story like Empire Strikes Back, for example, everything goes wrong for the good guys, and Season 2 of Cobra Kai follows a similar path. It's still surprising we live in a world of remakes and sequels to classic movies and TV shows we grew up on, but a large majority of them never live up to expectations, because it's often incredibly difficult to capture something of the past, and for it to satisfy the older viewer who the filmmakers are trying to entice, but also it has to entertain a younger audience who may not have that nostalgic connection. The studios don't want to alienate their audience, so it becomes a difficult balancing act, and in the case of Cobra Kai they really managed to achieve that. It appealed to me because I grew up watching the Karate Kid films on a regular basis, but also it modernised it so it didn't feel somewhat dated or out of touch. Season 2, with its more of a focus on the younger characters, didn't really interest me in the grand scheme of things. My investment is in Johnny and Daniel, and if that storyline continues to go from strength to strength, then I will be fully invested in Season 3.
I found that Cobra Kai belongs to me. It always has.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to see more retrospectives and commentaries. Also click on the bell to be notified of the latest reviews. If you want access to exclusive videos and to watch my content a few days before it's on YouTube, you can head on over to my Patreon. Thank you very much.